Good afternoon, everyone, on this very cold December Wednesday. We appreciate you joining us for the latest edition of the RVA757 Connects Innovation Spotlight webinar series. My name is Greg Gilligan. I'm the Vice President for Operations here at RVA757 Connects. We have a really very interesting program today about LS GreenLink USA's plans for a $680 million state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Chesapeake that will bring a 660-foot tower, which will be the tallest building in Virginia. So we'll hear about a little bit more about that in just a few moments. Let me just deal with a couple of housekeeping matters. As you can see, I will give you a quick update on what's going on with RVA 757 Connects. Then we'll delve into today's topic, and then we will leave some room at the very end for some Q&As from you. This is a reminder too, we do record all of our Innovation Spotlight webinars, so you'll be able to watch this on a replay starting later this afternoon. And also, if you have any questions for either our two speakers today, please use the chat function, and then I will go ahead and get those questions queued up. RVA 757 Connects is a nonprofit organization, so we rely on donations. And here are our corporate investors in RVA 757 Connects. As you can see, our corporate supporters include many of the biggest companies in the Richmond region and in Hampton Roads. We want to take this time to thank them for their support of us. And that's a great segue into telling you a little bit more about what RVA 757 Connects is. We are an organization that's bringing the power of connecting, convening, and collaborating. And our mission is dedicated to improving the economic success and the quality of life of everyone in the Richmond region, which we call RVA, and Hampton Roads, which we call 757. We are an association of leaders representing businesses, community, and higher education, and we're advancing the Hampton Roads to Richmond mega region as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. As you can see, we're pursuing several different priorities. One, which is to help the I-64 Innovation Corridor become a global internet hub. I'll talk about a little bit more about that in just a few moments. We also advocated for the widening of Interstate 64. There's 29 miles between the Richmond area and New Kent County and Williamsburg. That project is now fully funded, and VDOT has started construction on it. This should be finished sometime in 2028, where there'll be 3 lanes of each way for Interstate 64 between Richmond and Hampton Roads. We also are advocating for multi-use trails. One is Trail 757, which formerly had been called the Birthplace of America Trail. This multi-use trail is planned to start at the eastern end of the Virginia Capitol Trail in Jamestown, and there'll be 2 segments of Trail 757, and both will connect into the Virginia Capitol Trail. One route will run through James City County and will go all the way on the peninsula and land in Fort Monroe. The second route will start again in Jamestown, go across the James River at the Jamestown Scotland Ferry, and it will connect in to planned trails in Virginia Beach, and that will take you all the way to the ocean front. RVA 757 Connects helped the Tidewater Trails Alliance come up with this new name and logo and created a new website for it, which you can see here as a homepage for. So check it out if you have time, and also sign up and support this initiative. You can read about all of our various initiatives and our priorities on our website at RVA757Connects.com. Our top priority is to spearhead the efforts to have the Richmond and Hampton Roads mega region designated as a global internet hub. We spent much of 2022 and last year developing a strategic plan to make this happen. Now we are implementing this plan. The bottom line is the digital assets that we have puts our mega region on our way to becoming a global internet hub. When you view the Richmond area and the Hampton Roads regions together, we have these core components or digital assets in place and needed to become a global internet hub. This 3-foot by 2-foot map explains visually how the I-64 Innovation Corridor becomes a global internet hub by combining the digital assets of both the 2 regions. If you would like to receive an actual copy of this map brochure, please let me know and we'll put one in the mail. On the back side of this map brochure lists the 10 strategies. You can take a look at them and take a look at them when you have a chance. You can either see them, you can go to our website and you can see them at RVA757Connects.com, or you can go to globalinternethub.com website, and both have the map, both sides of the map, to get a better idea of what the digital assets are and what our strategies are. Please help us spread the word about this. We gave our Global Internet Hub initiative a soul this year by recruiting, I should say, a national nonprofit organization called PCs for People. PCs for People is the largest and most successful computer refurbisher operating in large U.S. markets with a vision to end the digital divide. PCs for People founder and CEO Casey Sorensen officially announced at our Convergence conference in the beginning of October that PCs for People has selected the Richmond to Hampton Roads mega region as its next expansion market. What does PCs for People do? It collects computers at no cost to donating businesses and organizations. It then refurbishes those old computers and installs the latest update softwares, and then provides renewed desktop systems to underserved residents and families for either free or late model laptops for up to $150. In addition, PCs for People provides free toll-free tech support services as well as free ongoing computer training. The nonprofit has been perfecting this model for the past 20 years, partnering with thousands of organizations and companies and other local refurbishers as well. PCs for People should be operational this spring. The nonprofit recently purchased a former Save-A-Lot grocery store building on East Pembroke Avenue in the city of Hampton, which is next door to that Dollar Tree store there. That building will serve as its refurbishment and distribution center. Go to pcsforpeople.org and you can get more information. Now let's turn to today's topic. LS GreenLink USA, which is a subsidiary of the South Korean-based LS Cable and Systems, plans to build a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in the city of Chesapeake that will bring a 660-foot tower, the tallest building in Virginia. The plant will produce high-voltage submarine power cables vital for offshore wind farms and clean energy transmission across the globe. At its height, the 660-foot tall plant tower is expected to exceed the height of the Westin Virginia Beach Tower, which right now is the state's largest building, which stands at 508 feet tall. Patrick Shim, who is managing director of LS GreenLink, will explain to us why such a tower is needed. Patrick is a senior executive member of the company responsible for the firm's corporate strategy, planning, expansions, investments, and operations in North America. After Patrick speaks, we'll hear from Matt Smith, who is the Director of Energy and Emerging Technologies for the Hampton Roads Alliance, which is a leading economic development organization for Hampton Roads. He's been with the Alliance since August of 2020. He will discuss how we are building an ecosystem in the Hampton Roads region to support the development of offshore wind industry in the U.S. and how LS is an anchor to that strategy. Before I turn over the program to Patrick, please let me remind everyone that if you do have any questions, please use the chat function. And now I will stop sharing and we'll let Patrick share his screen and we will go from there.
Great. Let's see. Is it working now?
That sounds good. Looks good.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Shim, and it's very nice to meet you. My name is Patrick Shim. I'm Managing Director with LS GreenLink. I understand that probably LS is not a household name. Not many people probably heard of us before. It's not a name that everyone's familiar with, but probably one name that more people are familiar with is LG, which is our sister company. So we spun off from LG back in 2002, And I'll kind of get into the details of what LG does versus what LS does, but we are on the industrial side of the business. So our core businesses are cable business, which is both power and communications cables. We have electronic component businesses, metal and materials business, farming equipment. So we even manufacture tractors. In fact, we have a manufacturing facility down in North Carolina, and also a lot of non-consumer business units. So I'll get into who we are kind of later in the slide. But before we get started on who we are, I kind of wanted to go through a little bit of history of South Korea first, because LS and LG are kind of how we grew the business, a lot to do with Korean history. So as many of you know, I mean, Korea went through a war in the 1950s, which is less than 100 years ago. You know, the Korean War started in 1950, ended in 1953, and after the war, both sides of the country were completely destroyed and devastated. So General MacArthur one time famously said Korea will take at least 100 years to recover from the war, because I mean, first of all, Korea is a very small country. And two, it was completely destroyed by the war over the 3 years. And, you know, after the war, especially South Korea was so poor. Some of the countries that provided economic aid includes Cambodia, Ethiopia, and some of the other countries. So, you know, South Korea especially went through a significant, you know, challenge after the war. And also, if you think about how North Korea came down to South Korea was more destroyed than North, because they went all the way to the kind of towards the end of South Korea, and we had to come back up. So Korea was completely destroyed. And after the war, for a while, actually, believe it or not, North Korea was wealthier than South Korea for at least the first decade after the war, because North Korea had both Soviet Union and China as trade partners. They had, you know, they were actually, believe it or not, wealthier than South Korea. But since then, I mean, South Korea definitely has grown. And, you know, only 35 years after the Korean War, South Korea hosted the Olympics in 1988. Now it's one of the largest economies in the world. And, you know, South Korea is very small. It's actually smaller than Virginia in size. So it's a very small country. But it really grew in a relatively short period of time. And a lot of, you know, global companies that's based out of that started in Korea and is headquartered in Korea. So you know, some of these are the companies that are global companies that are that are based in South Korea. In terms of LG, how it got started, it's actually kind of an interesting story. Believe it or not, we started as a relatively small store. And our founder started a business selling fabrics. The Koo family that started the business were historically academics. So back in those days in the 1930s in Korea, it was unheard of that academics were getting into business. So the Koo families were academics. They're relatively, middle class family, but because they were academics, they're really not into any kind of commerce or politics. They were just pure academics. But the oldest of the brothers married into a merchant family who were doing a lot of trade with Japan. So when he was 24 years old and after he got married, he started a store selling fabrics imported from Japan. And then a few years later, he started to sell beauty products. And as he was, selling these beauty products, he realized he can actually manufacture these. So he started a company called Lucky Chemical in 1947. Was producing facial creams, but this predecessor company, LG Chemical, which is one of the largest chemical companies in the world. So, less than 100 years ago, how LG got started was really selling facial creams. And from facial creams, we got into other businesses such as soaps and laundry detergents and other products. And also from that, they started to get into plastics business because, when we sell facial creams, we need plastics for cases and so this over period of time, company grew into other businesses. And then, so plastics business was started in the 1950s. And then we started the company called Gold Star, which, some of you may have heard of before because we sold our appliances in the U.S. under the name Gold Star before. But the Gold Star was started in 1958, which is now LG. But the reason why we even started Gold Star is not because we were trying to make money selling radios and televisions. We actually wanted to market our facial creams and our cleaning products. So the best way to advertise for us was through radios and televisions. So we really started our electronics business to market our other products. Over the years, those businesses grew on its own. And we started our cable business in 1962, which is now LS Cable. But cable business also was started because we happened to have an appliance business, so we needed cables. So, a lot of these growth were really came out of necessity and growing the business vertically. And we got into just other businesses over the years. So in the 60s, we also got into oil and gas business and other things. So the business grew. The LG really comes from Lucky Gold Star, and as you've seen earlier, our first chemical business was called Lucky. So that's where the Lucky L comes from, and then G comes from Gold Star, which is the Gold Star name. Gold Star. So that's where LG comes from, and when we split the business in 2003. We kind of we played with the letters. So LG took the name LG, and LS is from, is the industrial side, and GS is kind of short for Gold Star. So LS took L from LG and S from GS. So we kind of play with the letters. But over the years, this family grew quite a bit. So, when company was started, there were 6 brothers and 3 in-laws that were partners. So there are 9 founders. So over the years, the business grew and the family grew. So the first 3 brothers took the LG business, and then the second, the second 3 brothers took the LS, and the in-laws took GS. So we split the business in 2003, and they're all kind of large conglomerates on their own. So okay, I have no idea that. So LG, is kind of a large business on its own. As you know, LG has mostly an electronics company, but there's a chemical business and telecommunications business and many other businesses. So there's about 220,000 employees globally, with about 100 billion in sales globally. LS, we're more on the industrial side of the business. So we have power and communications cables business, metals and materials business. We are one of the largest copper smelters in the world. And also for cable business, we are one of the largest cable manufacturers in the world. And also we have automotive component businesses and other things. We have 13,000 employees globally for all LS businesses. So there's, and also we have about 30 billion in sales for LS. GS is more on the oil and gas, constructions and engineering, and retail business. There's about 30,000 employees and 80 billion in sales globally. And other than these 3 kind of businesses, more additional businesses also spun out from LG over the years with family members, and they all have funny two-letter names. So there's LX, which is logistics business, which also has, I believe, 4 or 5 billion in sales on its own. There's LF, which is a fashion business, and so they do fabrics and apparel businesses. LIG, which is an insurance company. They're all multi-billion in sales on their own, and they all spun out over the years. What we are doing, so LS GreenLink, it is a newly formed company. So within LS Cable, it's a new entity that we formed, and is a business that's going to be based out of Chesapeake, Virginia. And the goal is to manufacture submarine power cables for Virginia. So that's the factory we're building, and we back in July we announced a project with Governor Youngkin. Our announced investment is over $680 million, with over 330 jobs. And these are all 330 full-time jobs that are paying significantly higher than average wage for the region. And also we have 100 acres under contract, but we're only using about 50 acres initially. So there's a lot of expansion opportunities there. And within that 50 acres we're building 750 square feet manufacturing facility, which will be one of the largest cable manufacturing facilities in the world. And most importantly, we're building the 660 feet tower, which will be the tallest structure in Virginia on land. I know the Dominion project has the turbines that's taller than us, but that's out in the water. So on land, it will be the tallest building in Virginia, but also not only in Virginia, but in between Philadelphia and Charlotte. So the tower itself will be pretty significant. Also, what's interesting about the tower is so why do we need a tower? I guess let's just talk about that first. When we manufacture these cables, they have copper core in the middle, and in order to center the core of the cable, we use gravity. So we feed everything from the top and use the gravity to center it. And as they come down, we put jacketing and coating around it. Doing that sideways would be very difficult because these cables can be tens of miles long. So what we do is we just continue to feed everything from the top, and we basically use gravity to center everything. And as they come down, you'll see these carousels in the back. As it comes out, they go onto these carousels. It's like a cassette tape. So the cables we manufacture goes onto these carousels. And these cables are typically used for offshore wind farms, but it can be used for other interconnection projects, but mostly for offshore wind projects. So and these cables are fairly large in size, and also given that they can be tens of miles long, we cannot transport these cables by rail or truck. We load them onto cabling vessels and they go onto the job site. So as the vessels come in, by the way, this is a kind of wrong size vessel. Our architect didn't know how big the cabling vessels are. So cabling vessels that we'll be using are significantly larger. So these vessels would come in, and from our carousel, they get loaded onto the cabling vessel, which should have these carousels as well. So we'll unwind from one side and wind on the other side. So it'll be like cassette tape again. And so this is kind of what we are envisioning as what we call phase one. There may be future phases, given that we have additional space on the property, and we have more interest in investing. So that's kind of what we are doing in Virginia. And so we announced the project in July. But also along with our $680 million investment, we secured $99 million in federal tax credit through the Inflation Reduction Act. Also additional state and local incentives through VDP and Chesapeake Economic Development. And one thing I really wanted to point out is that these incentives are not free money. No one's writing just free money to us. So it's all based on capital investment and job creation. So we have to make capital investment in order to get these incentives. Also, we need to hire number of jobs and the payroll that we promised in order to get these incentives. And especially the IRA is a tax credit. It's not not a grant. So it's something that we use in the future as the business operates. But none of this is free money. So that's one thing I really wanted to point out. And also another thing I kind of really wanted to point out is that yes, we are a company from South Korea, but only two things we are bringing from Korea are capital and technology. I mean, everything from raw materials to workforce will be sourced locally. So it's really American-made products made by Americans in America. So we're not trying to bring everything from Korea. It's just technology. Everything will be made in the U.S., but also not only in the U.S. but in Virginia. But also, once we manufacture these cables, we'll be selling not only in the U.S. but to European market as well. So we'll be exporting these cables to Europe. So, and also in terms of our workforce, we have significant focus on partnering with military veterans. We are V3 certified employer. We're very proud of our association with V3. So we hope to have a lot of our workforce hired through military community. We always joke internally that there's no schooling that has cable manufacturing degrees, so no one really leaves any kind of schooling going out to make cables. So what we always look for are people who are reliable and also people who are trainable. And I think the military veterans community really bring that. So as we were looking for a site to go to, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit too, but we looked at, and before we chose Virginia, we spent about 2 years looking at every inch of the country pretty much. So we initially hired McKinsey & Company to kind of do a feasibility study on the market, and then we hired a local site selection firm to look at every inch of the country. And we looked at states everywhere from upstate New York all the way down to Georgia, and every city in between. And the last two cities that we had in mind were Norfolk and Chesapeake. After spending 2 years, so it was amazing how the last two sites were both in the Hampton Roads area. The Norfolk site was amazing as well. We had a lot of interest in going there, but only reason why we ended up not going there was because we wanted to buy and own our property. So the site in Norfolk was for lease, and it was very hard for us to invest, $680 million and not own the land. So we ended up picking Chesapeake because it was something we could own, and also there were more expansion opportunities there as well. So we looked at everywhere and chose Virginia. But one of the, I would say, top 5 reasons why we chose Virginia really was because of the workforce. That especially the Hampton Roads area has significant number of people leaving the military service every year, and we are very much interested in working with our veterans. And we're very proud to be a member of Hampton Roads Alliance and also Virginia Maritime Association. The two group been amazing partners for us, and we're very proud to be part of the organization. So, since I mentioned Hampton Roads Alliance, maybe I'll now pass it on to Matt Smith from Hampton Roads Alliance so that he can talk about.
Patrick, before you do that, do you want to show the video?
Yes, so let's
Show
share
me
the
the
video
video.
of our factory construction. So this is the video we're about to share is how our factory will be built starting this April. So we'll break ground in April of this year, and is obviously this video is not real time in terms of how the factory is going to be built. So what you see in the middle is the factory operation. You'll see the tower on the far right. So this is kind of the different direction from the photo you saw, the rendering you saw earlier. This is facing north, and then the small box you see on the lower left is the office. So it will just over a period of time just go up. And so this is now month 10. So the tower starts to go up. Our manufacturing facility starts to get kind of more, looks like factory structure. And month 11, so this is kind of how the factory will be built. So we break ground April of 2025. We'll be done with construction by third quarter 2027, and we'll be fully operational with everything running by first quarter 2028. And by then, we'll also not only have the factory and the tower and the office built, but also pier as well. Some of the vessels that come in to pick up cable from us are pretty significant in size. So we will have our own pier operation as well. So this factory does take a little bit of time to build, but it's it will be one of the largest cable factory manufacturing facilities in the world, and you see that we're building a pier there. And also, as you can see, there's about half of the site available for future expansions. And also, one thing I also wanted to show you, and Greg will share the video, is our existing tower in Korea. Our tower in Korea is a little bit shorter than what we were building in Chesapeake, but it's kind of similar in terms of idea. So you will have a lighting features on it with LED strips. So that's what our existing tower in Korea looks like with lighting features. And we are working with City of Chesapeake to kind of finalize what the lighting feature will look like. They're relatively dim, so it doesn't really bother anyone. And also at 9 p.m. we turn them off in Korea. So we're probably going to do the same thing with City of Chesapeake. Figure out what time we should turn it off and how dim the light should be or how bright the light should be. Those light strips can also change color. So what we do in Korea is depends on different season and holidays. We display different color schemes. The lighting feature we're envisioning in Chesapeake will be much kind of finer than that, so we can actually display messages on it. So we have different plans with the lighting features. We really hope that it will be a landmark for the region. Governor Youngkin and other people really wanted it to be a landmark. So we hope that we can use that tower for the community. The conference room that we're having on the top, we really wanted to open it up to the community. So In Korea, what we do is we open that up for our community partners to use. So, for example, if police department wants to have a retirement party, they can use it. Local schools use it on a regular basis. So we would love to do the same thing with our partners locally. And also in terms of the tower design, we're finalizing it. We're working with the Navy on that mainly because just north of our site is the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and just west of us is the St. Julian's Annex. So we want to make sure that we are not, looking at any of the military operations. So we're changing the window direction and design so that Navy is comfortable with our tower and the window. So those are being finalized, and we actually just shared our kind of final design with the Navy last week, so they're reviewing it. So we're making sure that all the partners we have in the area and our neighbors are comfortable with our design. So we should be finalizing that.
Great,
Matt,
Patrick, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Now we'll turn it over to Matt Smith from the Hampton Roads Alliance to give us a kind of a broader perspective of what's happening with the offshore wind industry in Hampton Roads. Matt?
All right, thanks, Craig. I just get a thumbs up from you to see if you can indicate you can see my screen. Appreciate it. Well, thank you, Greg, for inviting me to talk about the broader context of the LS project and what we're trying to accomplish here in Hampton Roads in growing the offshore wind industry and really becoming both a logistics and manufacturing hub for offshore wind. And I've talked to this group before and talked to many other groups, and oftentimes I talk in the future tense about what we want to be or our vision or our plans. And it's really nice to be able to talk about something that is occurring, the activity that's happening in Hampton Roads, and that we're on our way to being this logistics and manufacturing hub and growing our economy that way. I also want to thank Patrick for that really interesting history of LS and LG. That was kind of probably worth it just to show up for that. And also some deeper explanation about their facility and why they chose Hampton Roads. So Patrick was certainly the star of the show for today, but I want to talk to you a little bit about how we think the LS project can benefit our region and what we want to achieve more broadly within the offshore wind and kind of just the decarbonization sector in general. So quick introduction from me again, Matt Smith with the Hampton Roads Alliance. We're a regional economic development group that represents, I think now actually 15 localities in Hampton Roads. And we work through key industry sectors to grow the economy, help attract businesses to our region, but also even as importantly, help businesses in Hampton Roads grow as well. And if they want to do so through the offshore wind industry, do that. So with that, I will jump into a little bit about the broader context about what we're trying to achieve and then some of the activity going on in the region. So this is a map that really is spurring, is why this conversation is happening. So a map of all the projects that are being developed off of the East Coast of the US, offshore wind projects. Obviously, it's played a big role in why LS wanted a greater presence in the US, but is also why we at the Hampton Roads Alliance with our partners at localities in the region and other partners really think that we're well positioned to help support the growth of the broader industry. And you can see, obviously, it's a significant opportunity for a region like Hampton Roads. And then we also think that, if we didn't have some of the assets to really take advantage of this opportunity, we might not have put as many resources into pursuing it. But we've really found, compared to other regions on the East Coast, that we have a lot of advantages to provide the offshore wind industry. And Patrick touched on some in how they went into his decision or their LS's decision-making process. But the three I really highlight is you're not going to find better port infrastructure paired with a large and skilled maritime workforce, with a pro-business climate in Virginia that is also paired with a progressive energy policy and a strategic location. So in my mind, it was kind of a no-brainer for LS to choose Hampton Roads, but obviously it was a complicated decision. But we do have a lot of assets to support businesses like LS and the industry as a whole here in Hampton Roads. And then I also mentioned our partners. We obviously work closely with our localities, but in addition, work with departments and authorities at the state level, trade associations, support of Virginia developers. And so to help transform this section of our economy and bring more businesses in like LS, it really has taken a team. We've benefited from that. I'll take the risk of speaking for Patrick a little bit. I think that his company has benefited from these partners as well. And really, I think Virginia has set a model for how we're collaboratively helping the industry grow through these partnerships. So this is kind of the meat of what I wanted to talk about. It's really how Virginia is really leading the way in a lot of aspects of development of the offshore wind industry. There's still a kind of a focus on the Northeast as kind of the center of the industry, and that's valid. There are more projects up there right now. Boston and Providence have kind of been some of the home for the companies that are choosing to look at the US, but Virginia is a very viable option and becoming more of one for a variety of reasons. Because in order to grow the industry, you really need to grow 4 segments of it in order to be successful. You need to develop port infrastructure to enable the logistics component of offshore wind development. You need to be developing projects. So if you don't have a project like CVAL, Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind, and others, there aren't any reasons to develop a domestic supply chain and have companies locate in Virginia. And then we are also obviously working on developing a US supply chain to support that industry. The LS announcement and their plans are a big part of that. And I'll speak to how their facility actually is more than a one-off win for our region, but really is an anchor institution that we'll build around. And then, as Patrick mentioned, the workforce we have in the region is a tremendous asset. And I do want to specifically call out the Hampton Roads Workforce Council and their partnership. I won't go very in depth in the workforce development just because we have such a great partner. And I did see a question in the chat about the Talent Accelerator. LS is using the Virginia Talent Accelerator, so another great resource at the state level from BDP. So this is kind of the fun section of my presentation where I get to share some really interesting photos about how the industry is developing in Hampton Roads and the progress that we've made. So I mentioned port development is essential to growing the industry. In addition to the site that LS chose in Chesapeake, we have 2 facilities in a kind of our inner harbor. So this picture is an aerial photo looking north to the peninsula of one of the world's greatest harbors in Hampton Roads. And then I've called out 2 facilities in Portsmouth Marine Terminal and Fairwinds Landing. PMT will be important to offshore wind, but likely as a logistics terminal. Right now, I would say it's probably the premier logistics terminal for offshore wind in the entire country. Really a tremendous asset, and I'll get into some details there. And then Fairwinds Landing, that will likely ultimately be a dual-use facility to support our shipbuilding industry here, in addition to offshore wind. So a couple of details about Portsmouth Marine Terminal. And the reason I'm going into some of these details that aren't specifically about LS is really trying to convey how we're growing a comprehensive ecosystem here in the region to support the industry. And so I really want to paint that broad picture of what we're trying to do and how the LS facility fits into that. So this is a schematic view of PMT. Dominion Energy controls about 70 acres on the quayside. And what's really interesting about this in the context of the offshore wind industry, one, it's very rare to find an underutilized terminal facility like this that is available or partially available. But the even more interesting aspect of it is that this facility existed. It was ready. It was being used as a container terminal. But to be ready for offshore wind, over $200 million of investment had to go into just the Dominion section here highlighted in blue to support the industry, mainly to upgrade the load-bearing capacity to handle the components, these really heavy and large components that go into building an offshore wind project. And so again, going back to the point of now being able to show the world, the progress that we're making here. On the left, you can see a picture that's highlighting some of the construction. On the western side of the terminal, you can see some of the foundations have already been delivered. And then on the right, you can see those are some of the foundations that will be used for the Coastal Virginia offshore wind project. So they are being delivered from Germany to the US. So right now, all of the major components for CVOW are coming from abroad because we don't have a domestic supply chain that has the capacity or the expertise to create the components we need for the wind industry. And so that's another reason why it's really important that LS and other companies are choosing to invest in the US so that we can create that domestic supply chain, have some more security, and knowing that we'll have components available and ultimately bring down the cost of electricity from offshore wind. So moving on, I'll talk a little bit about Fairwinds Landing. Again, another tremendous facility. We were really blessed with two almost perfectly situated facilities to support the industry. In that if you need terminals that have a lot of acreage in deep water, we have two of probably the top 5 of those in the entire country, I would say on the East Coast. There was a study done by a consultant a couple of years ago, and I think these were ranked either number 2 or 3 best sites for offshore wind logistics and manufacturing. So again, one other thing to note before I move on is that the city of Norfolk and Fairwinds Landing received a port infrastructure development grant through the Department of Transportation. It's a $40 million grant that will be matched to help do some of the upgrades at this facility. So lots of work going on, a tremendous facility. And then again, I get to show a picture of what is actually happening here. And this is Dominion Energy's, they call it their Maritime Coordination Center, I believe. It's essentially the CVOW ops base, but it is under construction at Fairwinds Landing. You can see downtown Norfolk in the background. So again, lots going on to support the industry here in Hampton Roads. And then finally, before I get into how LS fits into this picture, I just want to kind of express the importance of project development. So just when it comes down to it, the more projects we have being developed off our coast, the more opportunity we have to build a domestic supply chain, because those suppliers are seeing that kind of consistent project pipeline that they can sell their project into. And so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but very good news across the board on the construction of the CVOW project. On time, on budget. They've installed 78 of those monopiles that you saw in a previous picture. And so with respect to kind of solidifying the project pipeline in their area, Dominion has also acquired this lease area in white that's adjacent to CVOW, and then a portion, the northern portion of Kitty Hawk Offshore Wind, which I think is now being called CVOW South. So we're developing our own local project pipeline, but again, we've talked to developers and others, and they feel that we can support the industry in a variety of ways up through New Jersey and potentially even farther north than that. So again, just some cool photos. These are the first monopiles being delivered from Rostock, Germany. A company called EEW fabricated those. This is a photo of those same monopiles now being loaded onto a vessel that will take them out of the project site to be installed. And this is after all of those upgrades have been made to PMT. So that has happened. And then this is an image of a company called Deme, is a Belgian company that is doing a lot of the installation work. So this is one of their vessels out there installing the monopiles. And just kind of a cool point to note, and I know I probably need to wrap up pretty quickly, but that circle you see there is actually called a bubble curtain, and it mitigates some of the impacts of the vibration and noise from installing these projects. So lots of precautions are being taken to protect the really valuable marine resources we have in the area. And then again, really kind of a crowning jewel of our supply chain development program so far is the LS decision to locate in Chesapeake. It's really been a pleasure to work with Patrick and his team Also want to give a lot of credit to the City of Chesapeake Economic Development staff and the work that they've done as well. But in the context of what I want to talk about, the LS decision to locate in Virginia and Hampton Roads is critically important, but just as a standalone project. But from our perspective, it's, we've laid out a strategy about how we want to grow the industry in the region. And part of that is growing around anchor manufacturers and anchor facilities. And so this is our first anchor manufacturer that is chosen Virginia. And we plan to work with LS to build around them. If they're interested in having suppliers nearby, we would be working with them to help those suppliers potentially locate in Virginia. And it really kind of validates Virginia as a location that can support the industry, and money talks, and LS has said that they believe in us to the tune of almost $700 million. So we're really looking forward to kind of building on that anchor manufacturer, anchor facility strategy. And then there was a comment about my contact information. So I'm sure Greg's going to share this and it's available there. So I will stop sharing my screen. And if there are questions, I'll turn it back over to Greg. But if there are questions and we have time, I'll be happy to answer.
That was great. Thank you, Matt, for giving us that look at the whole ecosystem in that area. And I'm glad that you shared some of those photos. I actually, back in June, took one of those boat rides out to see the monopiles being installed. It's a fascinating project. If anybody has a chance to get out, to ever go there, that would be great to be able to do. So now let's turn it over to questions and answers, and time for that. Patrick, let me ask you. Let me start off, because we do have a bunch in the chat, but I want to start off. What are some of the future plans? I mean, we don't even have your facility built yet. Won't be built for the next year. But are you guys looking beyond 2028? And how? And so briefly, also, how is the Trump administration right now wanting to kill, so to speak, the offshore wind industry? Is that going to impact your project at all?
So what's interesting, I'll kind of talk about the change in the administration first, because it's been talked about quite a bit. I think the new incoming administration has been pretty vocal about being against offshore wind industry for a while. But there are really two things. One, in the U.S., we have significant power demand this year. Our power demand will continue to rise. We're not saying offshore wind is the only answer, but we're saying we're one of the many answers. So we're not saying offshore wind needs to happen, but it's just more of, we need all the options available, whether it's nuclear or even we just need power. So what I really worry about in terms of our power demand in the U.S. is, we need to do everything possible. Like, when you're hungry, you cannot pick whether you're going to be vegetarian or, you want to have steak. You just need to have all the options available. So I think, when it comes to the new incoming administration, I believe that they'll understand, they'll see the need for the power in the coming years. It's not even in the near future, and the offshore wind is one of the many answers that we have. Second is, there's been a lot of support within the Republican Party on clean energy and some of the IRA related projects. It is true that for a significant amount of, actually majority of the IRA incentives went to red districts. So there are more and more policymakers are supporting IRA projects and clean technology within the Republican side. Even locally, John she's been very vocal about supporting IRA, although she's a Republican. So we believe that between the need for the power and also the jobs that these projects are creating throughout the country, I think they'll see the importance of these things. But in terms of the project itself, we're actually not too worried about the next 4 years, given that we'll be under construction for the next 4 years. We're more worried about kind of next. So, and also I understand, there's been some projects that came to Virginia and left, related to offshore wind because some of the projects got either delayed or canceled. But those are the projects that came and left because they were coming to the U.S. that are tied to very specific projects. But the factory we are building in Chesapeake is not currently tied to any project. I mean, we are that project in the manufacturing facility coming to Chesapeake. We are currently taking orders already from customers, but we're not tied to any existing projects. We are not worried about next 4 years. We're more concerned about next couple of decades. So that's kind of where we are with the kind of the topic on the next administration. In terms of expansion, I mean, we are very much interested in using the rest of the site and also investing more in Virginia. What we are building in Chesapeake for the submarine cable factory, there's a lot of process that can be used for land cables as well. So one of the things that we are thinking about is expanding the manufacturing capacity to do land-based cables. We're a pretty sizable company, so we do not only cables but a lot of equipment that goes into data center equipments and batteries and other things. So there could be some future expansion opportunities around data center equipment and EV batteries. Obviously Virginia is the capital of data centers in the U.S., so we have a lot of customer base already in Virginia. So we're very much interested in kind of looking at those opportunities in Virginia.
So Patrick, let me just go through some of these questions, and if you could just give us some quick answers on these, that would be great. So one question is, have you awarded a general contractor for the project?
Yeah, so we are at very, I would call it, within a couple of weeks of kind of signing and announcing who our general contractor will be. There's one final kind of group that we are finalizing our agreements with right now, and they are actually in Virginia right now to kind of put the final proposal together. So we will be announcing who our general contractor is.
Okay, and what about will this new plant use any cooling water for the Elizabeth River?
I mean, the only time we need cooling water is to cool a cable once we manufacture it. We are not getting the water directly from the river, and we're not discharging water into the river either. We basically use the typical city water, and we recycle that water to cool it. So we will have a water tank basically and recycle that water. We typically use it multiple times. And these are typically clean enough to kind of put into the purpose. So our manufacturing is very, very clean manufacturing. I mean, our factory floor would be clean enough to eat off of hopefully. So these are very clean manufacturing. So the water, we're not getting anything directly from the river, but we're not discharging anything into the river either.
And will that building, the flat building, will you use any solar panels on that building? Is that the question? So
we're currently talking to Dominion Energy about having kind of solar, option capabilities on site. The main manufacturing building is fairly large, so there's some opportunity there. We have storage buildings, we have office building. So we are currently in conversation with Dominion on solar.
And so Matt, let me ask you briefly, if you can, with the LS, GreenLink's investment and other offshore wind investments initiatives that are taking place, can you give me an idea? Can you give us an idea of how much the projected economic impact on the local job market and supply chain over the next decade? Do you have any figures that you can share with us?
We do. So Patrick mentioned the direct job creation from the project itself and over 330 jobs. But we have done some work to understand the impact to our economy of growing the offshore wind industry here. About, I'd say 4 years ago now, we partnered with Mangum Economics to help us understand that more. Both to understand the job creation specifically from the CVAL project, but also how many jobs we could expect to create if we were to become that logistics and manufacturing hub. The CVAL project, it's not exact, but roughly it was projected to create 1,000 jobs during the construction phase and then 1,000 permanent operations and maintenance jobs. And then if we were to become a region that could support essentially either the manufacturing or installation of roughly 1 gigawatt of offshore wind a year, Mangum estimated that we would create about 5,000 new jobs in Hampton Roads. So that's all kind of somewhat rough, but we do have an idea of the opportunity that's in front of us and how that can help us grow our maritime industry here in Hampton Roads.
And finally, Patrick, let me ask you this because we're wrapping things up here. But this tower, the 660-foot tower, will become almost an iconic building there in Hampton Roads. So do you think you might put 757 on the tower someplace to signify that you're definitely in the Hampton Roads market?
I mean, since we'll have those light strips, I think we can display messages. So, on special days, we'll display different messages. So we'll think about putting 757 on it. And on your birthday, Greg, we'll put "Happy Birthday, Greg" on it.
Okay. Do that for Matt as well. So
Yeah.
That's good. Well, let me just share. Let me let people know what's happening next and stuff. Just a reminder, you can go to our website to get updates and some of the initiatives that we're handling. Also, some questions. The video recording of this particular presentation will be uploaded on our website sometime later this afternoon. I should be sending you all an email when that is up, but you'll be able to get that there on our website. Next month, on Wednesday, January 8th, note this is a new time, new date. We normally have our webinars on the first Wednesday of every month, but the first Wednesday in January is New Year's Day. So we will do it 1 week later on Wednesday, January 8th. And this will be on SVT Robotics, which is a Norfolk-based company, which began in 2018 with a mission to kind of solve technology interoperability problem. So they've designed a platform that will enable companies, software companies, to enable to easily integrate and monitor software, robotics, automation, all those kinds of things to advance their business. So that should be an interesting discussion next month on Wednesday, January the 8th. Again, we want to thank all of our corporate sponsors for which we couldn't do all that we do without their help and support. We appreciate that. Also, I want to thank Patrick for taking his time out for doing this. This has been fascinating discussion and providing us with information about something that's going to be a really cool thing when it opens up in 3 or 4 years. And then also, Matt, thank you very much for giving us an overview of what's happening with this industry. It's a fast-growing industry in Hampton Roads, and it's coming up Interstate 64 up to Richmond. There's a lot of companies that are also locating in the Richmond region as well. Thank you to both of you for your time, and thank you for you all for joining us here on this webinar today. Remember, the next month, Wednesday, January 8th, will be our next webinar. Have a great day and have a happy holiday season. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.